Perfect. Anything else this time? Seeing nothing, we'll move on to item 3.3. The mayor and city councilors are here with a presentation by Carl New of New Company on the Vision 2040 program, schedule, and the process. Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a packet at each of your positions, has some items in it. We wanted to show it off tonight. Ruben Garcia put that together. We want to congratulate him. And so that's something there as a souvenir for you to keep things in. What I'd like to do for a few moments is just go through a brief orientation. We then have a few items that the city manager would like to discuss with you about the selection of the steering committee. We've been working on that. There'll be a few changes in my presentation versus what's in the packet, and I'll explain what those are in terms of dates, but we're pretty close. As you see here, this is the official symbol. Was created again by Ruben, the 2040 vision process, proud history, prosperous future, and that's beginning. What I'd like to discuss this afternoon with you, or this evening actually, a little bit of a progress report as to where we are. The process is gaining steam right now. Tentative schedule of activities, there's a copy of that in the folio that you've received in terms of projected dates as to what things will happen, and some of the immediate next steps, which we will get into, and then Mr. Rose will talk to you about the steering committee issue. As you take a look at this, I think, as I mentioned to you the first time we met, that change comes in waves, and of course, you have the history of 1870s to 2003, the incredibly spectacular period of 2003 to 2014, and then of course, what we're looking at now is from 2015 on up to 2040. And that's where the plan will basically be focusing. I've been reviewing a number of items that you've had on your website and so on. One of the things that's very obvious is this is a community on a big, fast pace about a lot of things. So as a result, what we're really going to be working at is that as you take a look at that period of 25 years, which may seem like a long time, given the momentum that you have in this community for growth, that's not going to be a long time. You're going to have a lot of things in place where you know how to make specific individual decisions as you're going along that will get you to the long-term outcome you're looking for. And that's why the telescope was adopted, and I have to compliment Ruben for that work also. Okay, we'll look a little bit at the clarification of roles because there are several groups. You already have a plan list of the activities. The logo template is up there on the slide. It's now called, there's a website that will be launched tomorrow. It's already been previewed or pre-saved on your website, the Maricopa2040vision.com. And then we'll talk a little bit about the community forums, which we will launch on October 20th. Key contributors are, of course, the city council and each of the council members, the city administration, and I want to compliment the city administration. We've been working a lot with a number of the department heads. I'm very fortunate to have Ainsley Legner working with us as interim assistant to the city manager. She has just been doing a fantastic job, and I want to compliment her here for all that she's done. Mr. Rose and all the department heads have been extremely cooperative, and we appreciate that. We're going to meet tomorrow with what we call community forum facilitators. We've actually had, is it 48 people that have signed up to do this from the city staff. We'll get the rest of them later. And then, of course, the issue project teams, which become very important later in the process. The role of the council is basically very straightforward. Sponsor the entire process, which you will be doing. You will appoint a steering committee, and Mr. Rose will talk a little bit about that. And I'll talk about the steering committee's function. It's a very important group of citizens who will essentially be overseeing the entire process that the council is sponsoring. Attend community forums, and when you attend those forums, you're welcome to be a spectator. We'd ask that you not try to impose ideas on the citizens, but certainly listen to them. You can ask questions and so on, because it is a city, community-driven process, council-sponsored. And so that's why. Be cheerleaders. Already we're getting ready to launch a tremendous number of broadcast letters going out. The mayor will be sending a great number of letters out to various community leaders and so on. So we're doing a lot to make sure there's community awareness, not only on the website, but also through direct invitation of influential people and other groups in the community that we want to know that will spread the word throughout. And Ainsley has been working very hard with that. The next one eventually is to adopt the 2040 strategic plan as a policy document. That'll be sometime probably in March. And then to eventually have timely reviews and updates. to keep it updated at least every 5 years. And I'll show you in a few moments then how do you link it to your 2-year strategic plan, which is an operational plan, because that's a very good concept, and we want to keep that intact and relate the long-term plan to the 2-year operational plan and commitment. The role of the administration is very much to provide facilitators, community forums, issue project teams, and to provide clerical, administrative, and logistical support. And the support we've received so far has just been absolutely outstanding. And I want to compliment everybody that's been involved. The project leader is Ainsley, and interim assistant manager to the city, assistant to the city manager, I'll get that right. And she is basically in charge of what goes on site. And she is, just as I mentioned earlier, is doing a phenomenal job. I am very pleased that she was selected for this position. My job is essentially to assist her and all the participants in the entire process. I will also be very actively involved during the community forums and the issue project teams, facilitating many of those activities. Tentative time schedule you have in your packet. There have been some changes made, so we'll talk about those off the packet. Some of those were made as late as just about 5 o'clock this afternoon in terms of scheduling activities and so on. There will be 9 community forums that are scheduled. There's in your packet in that list of activities, you'll find the 9 the groups, where they'll be involved and so on, the time frames of them. 6 of those meetings, right, 6 will be open to the public. And then we have 3 groups that ask that they have a meeting primarily for their group, the educational community, the Economic Commission, Review Committee, and also the Maricopa Advocate Program, all of whom we think would like to have their own activities, and we'll get them. Community forum process is basically to get input from the citizens. We'll present information at the beginning of each of those forums. They last 2.5 hours on the process, get them to envision the future of Maricopa in 2040. The mayor has done a wonderful job in presentations he's made with the concept of the importance of envisioning the future of the community, and I compliment him on that for what he's done on that issue. We'll generate shared input to the plan from the community, excuse me, and all of those forums will be facilitated roundtable discussions. And each table will have 8 people and a facilitator at the table leading them, and then we'll have group discussions on the comments that come out of each forum. The steering committee, which the council will appoint, and Mr. Rose will talk more about that in a few moments, is basically the group that oversees the entire process. We originally recommended 12 members, but in discussions today, that'll probably be 14 members, and you'll see why in a few moments, some comments from Mr. Rose. You will select that group, we hope, officially by no later than the 7th of October, and then I will train them as to what their role is in terms of the whole process. They will be very actively involved throughout the entire process as the steering committee. The community forums for the steering committee then also, when the forums are completed, they'll review the input and observations from each of the facilitators who will train tomorrow so that we get a thorough understanding of what it is that the public is telling us as to what they see for the future of the community that they envision Maricopa 2040. But also, what are the key issues that think they need to have, or we actually have to address to get to that outcome that you're looking for, which we call the key issues. I call them the strategic focus areas. What are the things that are absolutely quintessential that we must deal with to make sure the vision we have becomes reality? And then to define there's the vision. The next one is then to select the core elements, which will be then part of the basic plan, and then to go into the issue project teams. The issue project teams become extremely important because they will still put together then for each of those core issues a set of vision, goals, and strategies to be proposed to the community to achieve the long-term vision. It does not get into the operational effects of what goes on within the city. That's the role of council and administration to then define how they will then plan the steps as they go forward in their 2-year increments. Oops, there we go. The issue project teams basically are selected from volunteers from the community forums. As I mentioned, they will address the key vision elements, and they'll define a vision statement, goals, rationale, and strategies for each one. A lot of this is very similar to what you have in your 2-year plan, because when Brenda Fisher was here as the city manager, she adopted some of the concepts that are in that. We see that format of that plan being very similar to the one we'll be using, so that there will be a real similarity between the 2 plans that they can relate to each other. The final steps then will be probably in February and March. Two reasons. Number one is to have time to put all of the plan together in a draft, to have a chance to discuss the draft in depth with the City Council and administration so that they can give feedback to it, reaction to it, take it out into the community, get reaction from the community also. The next one then is at a council work session, is to give the council, again, a final chance to review the plan. If there's anything that they think should be reviewed, addressed differently, an alternative approach, we want to be able to have all of that out on the table so it can be discussed before the official document is presented for reception by the committee or the council and adoption as a vision plan. That, in a nutshell, is essentially where we are. The final thing, what we call integration, is the 2040 plan, then relating it, which is the strategic leadership plan, to what is actually truly a 2-year operational performance objectives plan. So that that long-term plan always drives what your shorter-term objectives are incrementally as you take 2-year steps towards 2040. And that's how the two process works. Fortunately, the way your current city plan is set up, it lends itself very nicely to this integration process. I think I have to compliment Ms. Fisher for having created that. What I'd like to do now, unless you have questions, is to ask Mr. Rose to address the steering committee issue, because we ran into some procedural issues that have to be addressed. Mr. Rose?
Thank you, Carl. I think that we've been able to address the procedural concerns that were raised. What we will be proposing on September the 16th is that the mayor and council create a 14-member task force advisory committee. And the 14 members would result in getting a very broad perspective and representation from the community. We're proposing that each council member would work with the mayor in the appointment of 2 citizens to the advisory committee, and it's been identified as citizens instead of residents in case you want individuals from the business community that may have a business in Maricopa but may not actually live in Maricopa. Staff will solicit applications moving forward for the task force committee. I believe that we're launching that tomorrow, so that you will have individuals, if you so choose, to select from. And on October the 7th, we're proposing that the mayor actually make the appointments to the advisory and steering committee. One of the issues of concern that was raised was how would this dovetail with the new city council coming on board. And I believe that as a part of the process, we've identified that we would prepare a draft document for you. Any changes that the new city council would desire could be made at that time. And so we'd be able to make those adjustments then. I think that covers all of the issues that we had discussed. Anything that I left out?
I think not.
All right,
We've got
great.
the steering committee thing. That's primarily the next most important step for the council, in addition to supporting the process and communicating it in the public. Questions? Councilmember Farrell.
Question for Greg. You mentioned the new city council, but what about the current city council as far as Councilmember Gussie, myself, and Councilmember Frank, who are going to be a part of this process? It looks like halfway through, and then the new council's coming on board. Is there any way or plan that the 3 of us, if we would like, could stay a part of this process and see it through and be a part of it through to January or the March 15th discussion and action?
Yeah, that is a decision that the city council will end up making, and I would suspect as a part of the identifying the individuals that would be long-term on the steering committee. But the other side of that is you still have an opportunity to participate in the various community forums that we will have, as well as when we bring this issue back before the council for consideration.
Thank you.
And you will have access to the drafts also, as will the community. Okay. Any other questions?
Council, questions?
Okay, if not, we're looking forward to it. You'll see a lot of momentum starting as of tomorrow. And then once we get the steering committee selected, we'll switch into high gear, and it'll be a very active period through the rest of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it.